Live now, don't miss the score. Join the build to something smarter than before. Not just points, it's aligned to clear. Better leads, better teams right here. It's Lead Score Monday, you know the vibe. Fixing what's broken, bringing it to life. Showdowns, labs, and quick fix flair. Casey's in the hot seat, see you there.
On the road to better scores, let's build what actually opens the door. On the road to better scores, let's build what actually opens the door.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, LinkedIn. Thank you for joining us for another lead scoring session. Today is August 27th, and this is the third day in a row that I've done a live about lead scoring. And that is all because we are quickly approaching August 31st, which is the score property sunset date. My understanding of what that means is if you're using the legacy historic scoring properties in HubSpot and using that for lead scoring, as of August 31st or maybe September 1st, I don't really know, the scores in there will be frozen in time, meaning they won't continue to calculate. So whatever scores people have in those properties when the tool officially sunsets, is what it will be for all time. And that's important because especially if you're using your scores for like a sales handoff experience, pretty much nobody will get handed off on Monday, the 1st. And so that's going to be something that teams will be working through if they haven't prepared with the new lead scoring app inside of HubSpot. Today, I have Chris with me, a historic lead score skeptic, hater, depends on what you... And yesterday, I had a 2-hour working session where I was helping some individuals kind of work through lead scoring questions. And Chris joined, and Chris built a score. It's first time building a score ever? Or have you built the scoring properties?
First time ever.
First time ever. All right. So, Chris, how did it go?
I learned a lot, for sure. Had some fun at the same time. But yeah, helped me understand why this is probably more challenging. I mean, there's two things. It's easy to build in platform. So that's not the challenging part. But the challenging part is because we kind of just went in, we looked at activity, tried to understand what it made sense to score on, talk through that out loud, like, website visits, have they logged into their customer portal that they have access to, have they signed up for a data summit tomorrow, if they attend, that'll be a different score. So I like to workshop that stuff and just, start building in. And I could see how teams that might be required to do that, like if the marketing person's doing that and they're trying to come up with things off the top of their head and nothing is documented outside of the number of leads that sales expects, I could see why it can be challenging to create good scores and consistent scores and things like that. I was having fun with it in terms of adding pretty random scoring. There was a level in my mind, like this is above this and this is not above this, but I was using scores like 42 and 68 and just kind of randomizing it. And I haven't looked at the list yet after the processing has been done. So I'm anxious to see what that looks like, but that's where we're at.
Yeah. And that's a good note is that the processing time takes at least 30 minutes, I think, or maybe up to 30. I don't know. It takes a minute for all the scores to be applied. So specifically important if you're creating your score for the first time, but also making any edits to the score, you won't see those changes immediately. So just something to take into consideration. as you move through it. One of the main pieces for you, Chris, is the engagement score piece. I know from our conversations that's just significantly more important to you than any like what HubSpot's referring to as the fit scores, but any like properties on the record. And you came in yesterday with your main question was like, what can I score based on? Did you feel like there were more or less options than you expected? How is that?
Still like to see the social and campaign like data come over that way.
Mhm.
But no, I think it was about right. I was pleasantly surprised with how you could kind of mix and match um, across domains.
Mhm.
But really, I think the rubber meets the road, and I I think it's often that this is what happens in real life. You go build the score, and then 30 minutes, like I didn't set an alarm to like go look at it.
Mhm.
So I'm trying to pull it up now as we go through it, and this is the point where I'll start to understand whether or not this score starts to make sense. Like, are the right people being scored? Do their scores make sense?
Mhm.
So this second half, I mean, how often do you find that in practice that, people kind of set it and forget it?
I do. And actually, so Friday is my last lead score mastermind session with the free mastermind program before the sunset. And I'm leaving the agenda fairly open for that session because it's the last working day before the sunset. So my first priority of that session is getting any like lingering questions that anyone in attendance has. Um, but after we get through those, my main discussion topic is like maintaining your scores and what that looks like, because I do find most teams set and forget. Um, I also find that most of the time, people will set up their lead scores, forget about it, and then a new CMO or head of sales or whatever comes in, and then suddenly we're like redoing our lead scores, which is okay in the fact that like at least we're revisiting them. But it would be much better if we had a proactive cadence and we were kind of working on them, not reactionary to like leadership changes, but reactionary in that our business changes all the time, and so those signals are going to change all the time. I mean, looking at my own business, I have I mean, I am but a small business, so lead scoring isn't a big pain point I have like personally, but looking at my business, I have really only started doing lives in the last like this year. Um, so I know we can't use like that attendance and things like that, but um, having the paid social or organic social rather web traffic for me would be important this year, but last year I probably wouldn't have scored it, maybe even at all, or I would have scored it less because I just wasn't doing as much of it. So I think it's important to like revisit that. In a perfect world, we would be doing that on a quarterly basis. I think in a more realistic world, we might be doing that every 6 months or at least once a year, kind of revisiting. The once a year thing makes me a little nervous just because, especially if you try to do that like at the end of the year, um, I imagine building scores based off of your next year goals instead of your like this year execution, if that makes sense. Um, so something also to think about. And I think that comes in with all things lead scoring, I mean, I say that all the time, that your lead scoring shouldn't be based on your goals. It should be first based on your actual numbers, actual data. And then you can sprinkle in some of your like goals, your targets and stuff like that. But that should really be secondary in prioritizing leads.
Do you mind if I screen share and we just dig in a little bit?
Never.
Okay. Because I think I've got a list of humans,
You have a list of humans.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Try not to share any sensitive data.
Yeah, I know. That's what I wasn't sure if you were going to.
Right. So you can see where I started. Apparently everybody has a score because it pulls in the whole database. So
Mhm.
I sorted these, I guess 4 different scores or 4 different field properties that were created based on the scores we set up yesterday.
Mhm.
And then I just sorted to understand like how I would need to filter these to even get a smaller list. And I'm sure this is the situation. I mean, for background folks, like work with smaller businesses. I'm from smaller businesses. I think you need a fair amount of lead volume in the first place to even warrant the need for scoring,
Yeah,
in my opinion. So
I
that's why this
agree. I
is
mean, that's why I don't have a lead score built for my business.
right. So that's why this is fairly foreign to me. Because it can definitely be one of those things you can go have fun with, but if you don't have volume to even need a score, like it can be a distraction too. So now that I have this, I would imagine things like there's a score history, or there's a score, like there's a new card, right? That kind
Click
of shows.
into one of those, hopefully.
Uh,
Or will it show something?
it might. Let me. Yeah. Can you change the view?
If you click on any of those, all of those are clickable. You can tell because they're the blue clickable color.
Can you
But
change
those,
this to full screen again? And
oh
I
yeah,
can find one to click on.
sorry.
There
Chris
we
is
go.
usually the producer, everyone.
Yeah. I've got names just off screen.
But yeah, all of those are clickable, and so you can click and see the score changes over time.
There we go. Riley won't mind, right?
Hi, Riley.
All right. Okay, I'm ready to share, I think.
So now, yeah, you can see what changed in the score over time. And you can see Chris's confusing scoring numbers that he mentioned before.
Okay. So but help me understand what I'm seeing.
Yeah, so it would be nicer if,
This will take us to the score, not contact information, correct? The C score calculations up here.
yes, based on the URL. Yes, that's what it looks like.
Yeah.
So luckily for you, you have those unique scores that make it a little easier for us to see why they got the scores they did. But it's just saying page view. It's not saying what the, so you could look at all your page view rules and determine which one triggered that, but it doesn't show right now in that explanation. So you can see they got, Riley got plus 697 for pages visited, but he also, I guess, might have visited some negative pages. Do you have a negative score in there?
I don't.
I'm wondering if this was the initial, I don't know, but I'm wondering if this is because it was the initial scoring, that it gave points for all the pages visited and then it removed points for like the outdated ones outside of your time frame. This is a guess though.
Okay. And are these just gonna, I guess these are all gonna be on this card or not? Yeah, so I think like, not to get buried in the weeds here, but taking a moment to understand, like, okay, this is the list of people who actually got scored. Does this list make sense? Right? Step one. And if it
Mhm.
does, why? If it doesn't, also why?
Mhm.
And then I would go back in to like probably gets at this point, I'm probably starting to document like what actually needs to be scored, what the point should be. Because that's partially why I chose random numbers
Mhm.
is like I can come in here and now understand like it- it'll be easier for me to tell what versus if I would have done like 1 point, 5 points, 10 points. Like there's so many ways to get to that kind of combination.
Mhm.
Um, and now I'd like would come in and refine. I'm really intrigued in this fit score that is not following the pattern of descending.
Mhm.
Um,
But this is
but
why I think it's important to not just like create your score, say you did it, and like assume that you were right. Because yeah, in this example, not everyone with a high engagement score is a high fit score.
yeah, and explain the importance of that real quick.
Um, Revisiting or the fact that not everyone that's a high fit score is a high engagement score.
Right, like why it's because there's an advantage to the score setup
Mhm.
now, right?
So the fit score is going to be based on the properties on the record. Traditionally, we're looking at like, I always say ICP fit, ideal customer profile fit. Are they the job titles in the that you typically work with? Are they in the region that you work with? This could also be if you're in B2B, the company size and things like that. Then the engagement is looking at what they actually did. And we all know, like, the most common example is if you have an intern who keeps going on your site, or a student is really a college student who keeps visiting your site, they might be doing research for a project, and maybe you have a really great article about, you know, write about HubSpot. Maybe they're researching HubSpot and HubSpot best practices for a paper in school. And they could visit my website a ton and watch a ton of my videos. But they're a college student. They're not buying my consulting services. Um, so your engagement could be high and your fit can be low. And that often is intentional or like beneficial in knowing that, because I usually set up my notifications based on the combination. Are they a good fit, and do they have strong engagement? If yes, then I send a different notification that says like, hey, hot lead, great fit, great engagement, 10 out of 10. But if they have good engagement and a bad fit score, the notification is different. And in many organizations, that the notification is actually sent to someone different, to identify if the contact is a bad fit, or if we don't have enough data on the contact to see if they're a good fit, which is the difference.
Right. So I think this one's a good example of some pretty close together scores.
Mhm.
One has a higher fit score than the other two.
So the
Or
person with the higher fit score, I might prioritize. In my scoring models, I would send a different notification that sends that directly to sales versus those 78s. I might um, I might have someone do a little bit more research on them to see if we can like enrich their data. Also, I know we work a lot with Clemens at Celestial. He has a solution for like enriching records using LinkedIn data. Enrichment costs money. You don't necessarily want to enrich everyone. However, if I'm seeing a lot of engagement and I don't have a lot of data on this person, that might be worth enriching at that point.
Yeah. I think having said that, like one of the reasons we're excited for tomorrow is that there are free tools available, from people like Stuart Balcom, Jonas Demetz, and Clemens up to a record count of like 10,000 often. So if you want to establish the like, is this a good thing for me to invest in? Like, do I need will better data like help us score better? Usually the answer is yes, but there's diminishing returns, and even knowing which enriched data that you want, like you might really badly want it to be job title, but that's not necessarily always the answer, for every use case I've seen, especially when you can't necessarily standardize and normalize all job titles very easily. So a lot of what we're talking about tomorrow is, are you even creating the space for scores, that makes sense, with all these beautiful tools now that you have to use. I think this one is interesting at the top. Whether or not this is the way it should be based on how we built it, I'm curious. This is meant to be like, okay, if you're here, you must be a customer. Like, at least the way I was building this out, which I think reminds me of use cases where you can overly emphasize marketing engagement, like content marketing engagement. They've watched all this stuff, but then miss the person who just went right to the demo form or right to the pricing page. And that's why we're seeing such a dramatic difference here. Like, even though the engagement score is low, they transacted in a way, they raised their hand in a way that's, they need to be at the top as far as priorities go.
Yeah.
Does that, like, if we want to, and I know it's interesting because now the door is open for lots of use cases beyond traditional lead scoring, right? I enjoyed seeing, Kevin posted about why do we need 10,000 yesterday, and somebody brought up a use case of like they manage like partner tiering like via this system, which makes sense. Like, if you're gonna use it differently than traditional lead scoring, I think the space to get flexible and handle it in specific ways for use case like is appreciated for sure. If I want to highlight, like, let's say new contacts from a customer, from an organization that's from a customer, maybe they represent a new location and they're hitting the website doing something differently, is that in fit as far as like based on life cycle stage, or is that in engagement somehow?
It would be in life cycle stage. That would be in fit, yeah. Unless the only way to include it in engagement is you could trigger a workflow and then score based on the workflow.
Okay.
I have a little mixed feelings on like that being the workaround in those cases, just because I think the idea of having like a bunch of workflows just set up to like segment people feels a little overwhelming.
Yeah. And something I was scoring on is access to a self-service portal, right? So if somebody were to use a portal, and I guess like maybe they're not using their domain, their company email address, or we have a bunch of different locations, so we can't necessarily use the domain as the indicator that they are a customer. The fact that they're coming in and accessing records that tells us they're a customer, I think that could be a level of engagement score that we would want to, like, shoot to the top. Could be a way to highlight that activity.
Yeah.
Um,
All right. Any final thoughts, Chris? How are you feeling about lead scoring?
I see its place. I still am very interested to hear the outcome of the conversation tomorrow, where a predominant theme through all the stages is going to be scores versus signals, or scores and signals. And trying to bridge that gap for people, I think, is going to be really helpful. Will be for me, for sure.
All right, I'll take it. Well, thank you everyone for listening. We hope you join us at the Data Summit tomorrow for more on this and so much more. All right, have a good day, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Live now, don't miss the score. Join the build to something smarter than before. Not just points, it's aligned and clear. Better leads, better teams right here. It's Lead Score Monday, you know the vibe. Fixing what's broken, bringing it to life. Showdowns, labs, and quick fix there. Casey's in the hot seat, see you there.
On the road to better scores, let's build what actually opens the door. On the road to better scores, let's build what actually opens the door.